Happy Monday, everybody. Today is March 2nd, 2026. This is First Alert Weather Plus, and we are talking about quite a bit of some interesting activity that will be moving in, heading into what is going to be a very warm weekend. So lots to talk about here on this episode of First Alert Weather Plus, and of course, let's get right into it. Let us pull up the weather graphics here, and we'll talk about it. So meteorological spring is here. The first official day of meteorological spring was, of course, on Sunday, March 1st. That was yesterday. Now, we are going to be seeing some spring-like conditions moving in, and that does mean some flood concerns that we'll have to watch, as well as very warm temperatures that we'll have to watch as well. Meanwhile, next weekend, even warmer temperatures. We're going to get a taste of summer in meteorological spring, and we'll get a look at that long-term forecast as we always do here on First Alert Weather Plus. First and foremost, we got to talk about what Marches have been like in the past, and of course our Weather Encyclopedia Chief Meteorologist Tony Cavalier has everything you need to know on some of the major events that have happened in Marches past to kick off meteorological spring.
Now on the tee driving, Tony Cavalier, play away please. Well, that's a little hyperbole, but we basically have warm weather infiltrating much of the country on this first week of March. It's interesting how the warm weather plays into big storms at this time of the year from coast to coast. Taping on Friday night when rains were confined to the Outer Banks of North Carolina, Myrtle Beach, and down into the southern states. But what we were looking at for the weekend was a huge area of quiet weather from Appalachia all the way to San Francisco Bay. However, out over the open Pacific, about 1,000 miles west of San Francisco Bay, there was this huge whirlpool swirling. And we focus our attention on these whirlpools for energetic weather that can produce storms from coast to coast. Moisture comes from the tropical Pacific, and the energy, whether it be from the wave over the Pacific or diving down from the North Pacific, that's a combination that can often produce some big-time storms across America. The key ingredient to getting a big storm is to be able to slurp tropical moisture from the Caribbean and the Gulf. And when all those ingredients get together, energy, whirlpools, moisture, and the key ingredient, extra booster shot of moisture coming from the Gulf and Caribbean, you get the big-time storms at this time of the year. So let's look at March over the years. I've been here since 1988. And I want to take you back to the blizzard of 1993. This is just before the inception of the Home and Garden Show, but that would have been the weekend of the Home and Garden Show, 12th to the 14th, and we had 2 feet of snow area-wide on a level, and the drifts were 5 feet tall. I still remember that Saturday night walking down to the Radisson after the 11 o'clock news, the old Radisson down on 4th Avenue, and the snow was so deep that it had been plowed, and there were bulldozers on 4th Avenue taking the snow and putting it in dump trucks to be brought down to the Ohio River. Great blizzard of 1993, known as the Superstorm. Except for the storm of 1950 renown, the Thanksgiving weekend storm, this is probably the storm on record in Appalachia. Now I want to fast forward just 4 years. The Great Flood of March the 1st through 3rd, 1997. The flood of record on the Little Sandy River, one of the great floods on the Mud River, swamped downtown Milton, and the Ohio River. To this day, the crest on the Ohio River after this storm is the highest I've seen in my 37 years at WSAZ. In fact, I still remember our 5 o'clock news reporter, our anchor Bill Murray, reporting on national TV wearing hip boots in downtown Chesapeake when the Ohio River came out of its banks, highest level I've seen in my 37 years here. And that Saturday afternoon, I reported over at the Senior Center, the Senior Rehabilitation Center, where Howard's Creek came into the Little Sandy. This is the flood of record in that part of the Little Sandy River Valley. And then, of course, there was 2012, the 2nd of March, the West Liberty tornado. There were a handful of tornadoes, including one that hit Salyersville in Kentucky and moved its way past Paintsville and died crossing the Tug River. And there was a sister strong storm tornado that hit near Otway and destroyed part of the Otway Volunteer Fire Department. The West Liberty tornado would kill several people. And I still remember that Saturday with Brian Bloomfield, a new photojournalist here at WSAZ. We made the trip into West Liberty to report the aftermath. The night before it was Grover Tadlock reporting. And we were met by the National Guardsman. And his words to me were, "Mr. Cavalier, you're going to have to take the long way into West Liberty." I didn't have to ask why, because as he was saying that, there were two coroner vans coming out of West Liberty. One had written Jessamine County in Kentucky. The other had written Clark County in Kentucky. Basically, there was a helping hand coming from central Kentucky on the devastating tornado. When I reached downtown West Liberty, the decapitation of buildings on Prestonsburg Street and the overall damage was mind-boggling. I had seen big tornadoes in documentaries, but now for the first time I was seeing firsthand what a big tornado would do. And in fact, that tornado in West Liberty that night would then cross over into Lawrence County, Kentucky, where the following day, which would be Sunday, the tornado occurred on Friday evening. I went to West Liberty to report on Saturday. And the following Sunday, in the midst of snow showers, I made my way with Hannah Francis, a photojournalist here at WSAZ, over to Lawrence County, Kentucky, where the same West Liberty tornado moved through Lawrence County. And as it did, on the left fork of the Little Blaine, it thrust a mobile home into the air and crashed it against the hillside. 2 people perished in that mobile home. The roar, lion roar nomenclature I use for March is not only for the wind blowing, but for these extreme temperature contrasts between Canada staying real cold over the snowpack and much of the United States warming to the point where spring is in the air. And when that occurs, the March weather can turn extreme. And there are other examples of that over the years that I have not included in this. March will be a very volatile and active month, and there will be many first alert days to be declared this month ahead. Thank you for watching.
And we already do have first alert weather days that are in place for the end of this week. Thank you, Tony, for that. Gives us a good insight into how extreme the weather can get during the month of March. And while we're not seeing any extreme weather today, we did see some pretty active weather. In fact, we did have a first alert weather day in place today for a storm that has kind of moved itself away from the area. Let's talk about it here on our water vapor satellite. It's bringing in a lot of moisture from the Gulf. You can actually see the disturbance right here moving out toward the Atlantic Ocean. That's going to bring in some pretty good snows once again to the northeast. Meanwhile, a bit of a dry period overnight for us, but look what's right on this storm's heels. Another area of low pressure coming out of the Rockies and eventually entering into our region overnight tonight and into your day tomorrow. Another disturbance back to the west. So multiple disturbances will be headed our way. And with that, we're going to continue to see a pretty rainy week this week and more the potential of flooding as we move forward here. Here's showers that continue to develop over the region. Now, again, did see a little freezing rain this morning thanks to temperatures that were sub-freezing. Now every temperature is above freezing, so there's some good news. And I want you to notice the temperature trend over the last couple of hours or so. It's been increasing, and we are expecting those temperatures to continue to increase during the much of the evening here and into the overnight hours as well. Get you a closer look at that. So most, if not all of us, not seeing much in the way of any sort of wintry precipitation. Let's zoom on into southern Ohio. This is where they did see some of those freezing rain reports. A lot of these were just a trace of freezing rain, but it doesn't take a whole lot to slow you down when you get into some of that ice and freezing rain. So here's a few of those reports for you right here. We got a trace amount of, quote, wintry mix up in Meigs County, Ohio. That would be in Pomeroy. Let's get a few more reports on there. Here's a report out of Ripley. We got a glaze of ice on elevated surfaces with 1/10 of an inch of snow prior to the ice falling. Let's clear that map off for you. Some more spots that got reports this morning. Northern Gallia County, a glaze of ice on the grass. In fact, 0.02 of an inch of ice was reported up there in Gallia County. We also got a few reports of a glaze of ice out toward Greenup County, and a little bit of sleet as well in Carter County, Kentucky, down toward the Grayson area right there. Those are the extent of the reports that we do see. Again, that trace of sleet right there that did occur. But yes, we did see that wintry precipitation as advertised. Now it is all rain. Temperatures right now into the upper 30s and lower 40s. Further to the south, look at this, 46 in Logan, 47 in Pikeville. And again, these southeasterly winds that we do see are going to gradually warm the temperatures up as we head into the overnight hours. So that front is lifting to the north. This means that over the coming days, we are going to see the development, my apologies there, we are going to see the development of warmer temperatures, but also a stationary front. This warm front is actually going to end up being a little bit more stationary compared to it being a warm front. So this warm air does move in, but north of this front right here, we will have to watch for some high water concerns, especially in southern Ohio with some spot floods. In fact, let's take a closer look at how this system is really expected to stall out. Notice minor disturbances, again, coming up along this temperature gradient. Tony mentioned that temperature gradient. The winds are going to really strengthen up, and where you get these maximum of wind speeds high up in the sky, you get this divergence of air, which causes that lift. And we see this very weak but very present wind speed maximum overhead with, again, going out of the exit region of that, a more southerly component of wind versus a northeasterly component of wind, causing that divergence, that rising motion, that low pressure to develop. And same thing here in the entrance region of that, more of a southerly component here, more of an easterly component here. And that's what's going to cause, again, an area of low pressure to develop and cause some of that precipitation over the region. Another thing we have to watch for is the lower level winds heading into Thursday. And again, more of this disturbance that shows up on Wednesday. And of course, once we head into the day on Thursday, that next disturbance moving in. So it's not any strong storm, nor is it any really big, impactful thing that's going to drop rain within, let's say, 12 hours, but it's going to be multiple days of just soaking rain in southern Ohio that could cause those creeks and streams to rise. Another thing we have to watch for is where the winds slow down in the lower levels of the atmosphere and where the winds come together in the lower levels of the atmosphere. Here's a case in point here of Tuesday. I want you to notice the winds kind of hitting this wall right here, slowing down. We're going to see the development of showers within this zone right in here. Now, as we move forward into time, I want you to watch these streamlines, these white streamlines, how they behave, as well as where the faster winds are. Notice we've got fast wind speeds down in parts of Kentucky, parts of southern West Virginia, parts of Ohio seeing very slow wind speeds, and again, winds coming together over Ohio right in this area. This is going to cause a ton of lift, rising motion, and forcing for these showers to develop over southern Ohio, especially, I'd say, Tuesday through Wednesday, even into Thursday morning, but especially Wednesday morning here is where we're expecting some of that really heavy activity to develop. And again, we see that on Thursday before a cold front eventually works in, and that's going to kick in some showers and thunderstorms as we head into the afternoon hours of Thursday. So all this said and done, here's what we're expecting. This is the latest European model. Again, notice where this band of rain shows up. Southern Ohio, State Route 32. This is a corridor called the Appalachian Highway Corridor. I'm drawing it on here for you. It runs from Athens through Jackson, Waverly, Piketon, into parts of Highland County, Brown County, as well as Adams County, Ohio, over toward Claremont County and into the Cincinnati area. That's that zone where we're expected to see some of the heaviest precipitation out of this event. We do get a little waivers to the south, waivers to the north here or there, but the consistency is going to be, again, up into southern Ohio, Jackson, Ohio, Waverly, Piketon, Pomeroy, Athens, places like that, even into parts of central and northern West Virginia as well, Ripley, Elizabeth, Grantsville, the Spencer area. That's where we're really going to have to watch. Again, that's where that wind in the lower levels of the atmosphere really slows down, comes together, forces that air up to create showers and maybe even a few rumbles of thunder. And there's that aforementioned cold front I mentioned on Thursday. Here's a higher resolution model. This is our in-house graph model. Notice again, we'll start to see rain taper off over tonight. then we'll start to see that rain begin to set up. And look at this. This is quite a bit of heavy rain setting up overnight Tuesday night and into Wednesday morning. Same thing Wednesday night into Thursday over southern Ohio, over those areas that we did talk about. So the European model putting out a general 2 to 3 inches of rain for a lot of southern Ohio here. And in an area or a time of year, I should say, where those creeks and streams are already kind of on the high levels of the banks here, adding 2.5 to 3 inches of rain on top of that is not going to make for an ideal situation. So that's why we do have a first alert weather day that is already out for Thursday. Same thing here with our graph model, that high resolution model showing very heavy rain totals. In fact, we're looking at 3 to 4 inches of rain if this model does come true over parts of Brown County, Adams County, and Claremont counties in Ohio. So pretty astonishing totals that we're seeing out of this. And again, we do have a first alert weather day already for Thursday. We may need another first alert weather day that needs to be in place for Wednesday. We'll keep you updated on that. Dylan's going to have you updated on that tomorrow morning. Excessive rainfall outlook for tomorrow, level 1 of 4 marginal risk. This is from the Weather Prediction Center out of College Park, Maryland. And again, it's because of all these ingredients coming together. Wednesday, kind of the same deal. And I do believe Thursday we're in that as well. So with flooding possible, it's important that you know what a hydrograph is and what goes into a hydrograph. Well, meteorologist Dylan Godet kind of explains what to look for and how to forecast flooding for your rivers.
Good evening, everyone. First Alert meteorologist Dylan Godet here. As Nicholas has been talking about, we do have a lot of rain in the forecast here as we head really through the middle of the month of March. The forecast is looking pretty active for us. And it could get to the point as the mountains are still melting away some of the snow high up. We've got creeks and streams that are already running a little bit high across the region that we could be dealing with river flooding. And one area that we use and one example of what we use to forecast for those rivers would be looking at a hydrograph. So this is an example of a hydrograph and something you may see here on air if we are going to be dealing with flooding in the future. This is a look at basically a timeline of a river to where when we're dealing with normal river conditions, it would show up in this white zone in terms of what's being observed. But during a heavy rainfall event, particularly multi-day heavy rainfall event, notice how that starts to climb into action stage, minor stage, moderate flooding, and then major flooding. The blue line would represent the observations that's taking place at the river. But this forecast is done by taking several different computer models, putting them together, and that's where you eventually find what is the expected crest. For example, this would be a 17-foot crest, which is 3 feet above the major flood stage mark. A lot of our area rivers last spring we had to deal with just this, moderate to close to major flooding. We don't have that in the forecast for us, but definitely could be dealing with some moderate to minor river flooding here over the next maybe couple weeks as we are expected to enter a very active weather time frame here as we enter the month of March. So make sure you are staying with the First Alert Weather team. You may be seeing more of these hydrographs in the near future if we are going to be dealing with any river flooding here across the tri-state.
And of course, you want to know about your forecast for tomorrow, and that's where meteorologist Emily Dietz comes in, I should say. She has your zone-by-zone forecast.
This Tuesday morning is going to start off a lot warmer than what we were seeing on Monday morning, already in southern Ohio into the 40s. Athens around 44 degrees, Gallipolis 47, Portsmouth and Ironton 48, with a chance for some light showers rolling over from Monday night and a nice southerly flow. Now over in eastern Kentucky, those temperatures by that lunchtime hour are already starting to pick up well into the 50s and even the 60s to the further southern area. Prestonburg around 64, Pikeville 65, up to the north, Greenup 55 and Grayson 57. Again, the chance for some light showers mainly in the northern part of the area, but still an overall cloudy day. And then over in southern West Virginia by the 4 p.m. hour, temperatures will be around their peak, weighing around 63, Hamlin 62. With again, that chance for some showers more as we go into this late afternoon, early evening time frame. Still seeing a nice southerly flow. And then in central West Virginia by that 8 p.m. hour, still looking at that chance for some rain. Temperatures in the upper 50s for a good portion of the area, and still seeing that nice southeasterly wind.
Thanks there, Emily. Yeah, it looks like a little bit of rain moves in tomorrow, but again, especially southern Ohio where that lifting and that forcing is going to be. Now let's take a look at what is causing some temperatures to increase for the weekend. Of course, once we head out of Thursday, we're going to see the development of some pretty nice conditions, so let's get right into that. That disturbance that I mentioned earlier for Thursday now moves off to the Atlantic, and I want you to notice one thing here. As these winds are kind of forcing an area of high pressure. It's a weak high pressure, but you notice a northerly component of wind as well as a southerly component of wind. Convergence of air, creating that high pressure, sinking motion directly over our region. In the meantime, another disturbance back to the west over parts of the central lowlands. We start to see more of a southerly/southeasterly component of wind at the exit region of that, a more southwesterly component of wind there. So low pressure caused over parts of southern Wisconsin, parts of eastern Iowa, northwestern Illinois. Air blows from high to low pressure. So we're going to see a southeasterly wind develop in for much of the weekend, and that is going to force up some very warm temperatures. In fact, nearly record highs could be expected for both Friday and Saturday as we move in there. And eventually that low pressure starts to work in Saturday into Sunday, but for most of the day on Friday and for most of the day on Saturday should be great. This is the European model temperatures for Friday: 78 Huntington, 76 Charleston, 79 Paintsville. Record highs in the low 80s for this time of year. So again, we're getting really, really close, and I would not at all be surprised if we did see temperatures try to beat those record highs. European model suggesting upper 70s for the region as well for the day Saturday. Again, this is the National Weather Service model. This is what they use to forecast their temperatures, upper 70s and lower 80s over the widespread region. And as we head into, let's say, Saturday, we're looking at very nice conditions as well. So a very warm weekend is to be expected over the region too. And so just great conditions that we'll have to watch as we head into the weekend. So now let's talk about, of course, the long-term forecast as we move forward here. Of course, we have to go to our other weather computer to look at that. And we always start with the Madden-Julian oscillation here. So let's go right into that. Of course, you may notice that we are headed toward that warm phase of that Madden-Julian oscillation, going toward phase 5 and 6. Remember, the left side of this diagram means cooler. The right side of this diagram means warmer. Notice ever since, let's say, the end of February, we've been on this warmer side, and that's when those warmer temperatures, other than a few hiccups here or there, have been really making their way into the area. But the long term suggests we get back into a cooler phase, so we'll have to see this as we move forward into time. That would be, of course, the American model. Let's go look at the European model, some of the longer term forecast. And again, the European model suggests toward the middle of March we could start to head back into more of that cooler phase. So warmer weather not lasting at least terribly long as we head into parts of March. So we'll have to watch that closely. Meanwhile, the Arctic oscillation remains positive. Again, all ingredients for a warmer trend, and that warmer trend should continue as we head into the middle of March. But notice as we head toward, let's say, the latter half of March, we're looking at a cooler trend in that. Same thing with the North Atlantic oscillation, though it does level out toward a positive. So if that stays positive, that could limit the extent of how cold the air gets. But trends are looking toward a little bit of a cooler stretch as we end March compared to where we are headed for the beginning of March. That's something we definitely need to keep a look at. So let's go back to the weather graphics here. and get you an idea of what the Climate Prediction Center is saying and what the models are saying. Again, look at that really strong polar vortex. That is that positive Arctic oscillation we've been talking about here. And that continues to really dominate the entire region. Cold air over Alaska, so that means a positive Eastern Pacific oscillation, positive North Atlantic oscillation. And meanwhile, all that warm air is to the south. The cold air trapped well to the north. So we remain in this warmer pattern for sure. And it does look to continue at least over the next 6 to 10 days. Closer look at that, suggesting, again, we're in those yellows, we're in those oranges, very warm conditions heading even into next week and even toward the middle of next week before maybe a little bit of a break as we head toward the end of next week. Now, days 8 to 14, meaning after this week, after the next 7 days, toward the end of next week and toward the middle of March, notice we start to get more on this gradient right here, battleground between colder air up into the upper Midwest and warmer air along the East Coast. What that means is that we are going to have to look at the development of, again, that pattern change as we head into the end of March. But we remain in very above average precipitation, according to the Climate Prediction Center. So that is something we are also watching here as well. Super 7-day forecast. Again, we're watching for that flooding. First alert weather day on Thursday. Meanwhile, record warmth again expected for the weekend, 80 on Friday, 82 on Saturday. We are back into the 70s Sunday and Monday as more thunderstorms do move in. This is First Alert Weather Plus. We air every Monday after the 6 p.m. news here on WSAZ Plus. We give you in-depth information on forecasts, first alert for anything that could be impacting you, and timing out everything and going into the weather history as well. If you want to find us on YouTube, that's WSAZ First Alert Weather Plus. Be sure to like and subscribe to that, and be sure to follow us all on Facebook. In the meantime, I'm meteorologist Nicholas Snyder. Make it a great Monday, everybody.